Warning, this video is so dangerous it made Gary Black fear for his safety and suggest that I may be crazy. So before you watch this video, be ready. Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I want to talk about the so-called Twitter overhang. This is a made-up idea that I think Gary Black is primarily responsible for. He's not the only one responsible for it, but he's pushed it so hard. He sells t-shirts called Twitter Overhang. He has a website called twitteroverhang.com. He sells these shirts for like 60 bucks a piece. What we're going to see, I'm going to go through this a bit. And I just have down here Dan Ives, who is a Wall Street analyst. Dan Ives is also pushing the Twitter overhang story. This phrase Twitter overhang caught a lot of heat. A lot of people think there's something there. Twitter overhang is not a real thing. It is a manufactured thing. It is what is commonly known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's get into it. Are you ready? Let's go. Fundamentally, the thing is that there's no connection between Twitter and Tesla. Whatever Elon does with Twitter has nothing to do with what happens with Tesla, the company. It doesn't affect how many cars Tesla makes. It doesn't affect how many megapacks or Powerwalls Tesla makes. It doesn't affect sales. People don't buy fewer Teslas because Elon bought Twitter. This idea that there's some sort of overhang is nonsense, that there's no connection. Like, stocks should be valued based on their fundamentals. How much revenue is the company generating? How much profit is it making? How fast is it growing? How likely is it to grow in the future? These are the kind of things that matter for the long-term valuation of a stock. And if you are a long-term investor, you look at those things to figure out, okay, what do I think is this stock going to be worth in the future? What am I willing to pay for it today? What happens is you get short-term traders and other people playing games who inject other ideas to try to move the stock, or they just, I mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily malevolent. They may actually believe it, but if you beat a drum long enough, people start to buy it. And Gary Black in particular has been beating this overhang drum for as long as anybody. I think it's his idea. He's certainly selling shirts based on it. But I just did a little search on Twitter, and I want to show you some of the holes in this story. So here you go. This is from 8 hours ago. So this is today. And Gary says Elon's Twitter investment doesn't impact Tesla financials, volumes, pricing, etc. It impacts Tesla price earnings ratio. Why? Why would it affect the price earnings ratio? Price earnings ratio is determined by growth. It's the growth in profits is what determines price earnings ratio. How does the Twitter investment affect price earnings ratio? An institutional sentiment towards Tesla because of the Twitter overhang. What is this what does sentiment mean? You know, if you're a sophisticated investor, you're not driven by sentiment. You're driven by how much money is this company gonna make, and what does that mean for the long-term value of the stock? Sentiment? What does that mean? And he blames it on Elon sells more Tesla stock. Okay, I understand how short term, if a large shareholder, and Elon's a large shareholder, sells a lot of stock, you're increasing supply of stock. If there isn't corresponding demand, the stock price would fall. In economic theory and finance theory, the long-term investors who are smart recognize this is a buying opportunity. They buy the stock cheap and the stock price goes back up. So for some reason, that's not happening. Tesla remains our number one position since we believe the Twitter overhang, which can't be denied, C stock price will ultimately lift once Elon brings in a world-class CEO to run Twitter. So what happens here is Gary started the Twitter overhang story with the overhang. You'll see this later. The overhang will end once the deal is closed or once the deal is over. He keeps creating new conditions to justify the extension of the overhang because I guess that sells more t-shirts. But now the Twitter overhang didn't end when he used to say the Twitter overhang would end when the deal was resolved. But now the deal's resolved, then the Twitter overhang has to continue, I guess, because you have to sell t-shirts, Gary. I don't know what the story is. And it can't be denied C stock price. The stock price, why is Amazon down 50%? Is that because of the Twitter overhang? Is that because of Elon's behavior? There's a lot of stocks that are down a lot. You can't explain everything based on the overhang. But now Elon needs to bring in a world-class CEO to run Twitter. Why? That you just totally don't get the idea. Like, Elon has explained what he's trying to do with Twitter. If he brings somebody else in to run Twitter, then he doesn't accomplish the goals. He took over Tesla. And Dave Lee and Gary had an exchange. There's an exchange between Gary Black and Dave Lee where Dave says Elon isn't bringing in an ad person to run Twitter. That would be giving up. And Gary's going back and forth. Someone has to pay the bills. And this is, Dave understands Tesla.
Gary does not really understand Tesla. There's long-standing evidence that Gary thinks he understands Tesla, but doesn't understand Tesla. And this overhang story is a part of it because the overhang is whatever he wants it to be whenever he needs it to be something. Gabe points out, Elon isn't bringing an end person on Twitter because he bought Twitter for a reason. He has a purpose, and Gary doesn't care about Elon's purpose. I don't know if he just want to sell shirts, if he's on board with the haters. I don't know what the story is there. And of course, Gary says stop hating. Gary hates Elon taking over Twitter. So now this is 7 hours ago. Twitter overhang will lift once Elon brings in a Twitter CEO. When everyone's attacking, he fights back even harder. When he realizes he's wrong, he pivots quickly to correct. We're still a few weeks from Elon realizing he will need a strong ad person in to run Twitter. You just don't get Elon. That's not how Elon thinks. Many still deny the existence of a Twitter overhang on the stock, despite clear evidence to the contrary. But what did he say before? I guess Twitter, this is October 26th. I guess Twitter is now essentially a done deal. Let the overhang lift. See, when the deal was pending and it was uncertainty about the Twitter deal, Gary insisted that the overhang was going to exist until Elon took over Twitter, and he predicted that the overhang would lift. But now the overhang didn't lift, or the stock didn't go back up, and he has to justify somehow that the stock hasn't gone up, back up because of the overhang that he said was going to lift. He declared it, right? He declared let the overhang lift, and then he didn't get the result he wanted, so the overhang didn't lift. And here it is, October 28th. The Twitter overhang lifted. A monster fourth quarter coming. Back in October 17th, the stock is depressed because of the Twitter overhang. Both factors should lift in the next 1 to 2 quarters. Now, wait a minute. You said it was going to lift when the deal was resolved. Now it's 1 to 2 quarters? What's going on there? Here he is selling merch. Okay, give him credit for figuring out how to make money on something dumb. October 12th, Twitter deal about to close, overhang lifts. The Twitter deal closed, and Gary couldn't let go. He said it was going to lift. He said it was going to lift when the deal closed. When the deal closed, he said it was going to lift. It was lifted. And now he's still harping on the Twitter overhang. What did you think, Gary? Did you think Elon was going to buy Twitter and bring somebody else in to run it and not pursue his agenda? Ridiculous. Twitter overhang lifting back on October 25th. Tesla sellers missing the big picture. Tesla should recover as Twitter overhang lifts. So the problem is that when the deal closed, the stock price didn't go back up. So Gary was wrong. So Gary had to manufacture that the overhang is still there. How he gets out of, what did he think was going to happen when the deal closed? He thought the uncertainty of the deal was an overhang. And once the deal closes and Elon takes over and he's running the company, now all of a sudden the overhang is something different. So I could do a lot of this. There's just like an endless stream of Gary tweeting about overhang. I mean, it's really like crazy how many times he tweeted about overhang. I'm just going to scroll through it. You can see. All I searched for was overhang from Gary Black, and there's like a long stream of tweets. But we don't need to go through that all. I just want to explain the way I see it. The Twitter overhang is what I would call a self-fulfilling prophecy. There was never any truth to it. There still isn't any truth to it. Twitter has nothing to do with Tesla, the company. And Gary has acknowledged that. What happened is people manufactured a story that the Twitter overhang, this Twitter deal, somehow affects Tesla, the stock, and that's going to push the stock price down. Now, look, I'm a long-term investor. I've been buying Tesla stock since 2016. The Twitter overhang has had zero impact on my stock positions. My general strategy with Tesla is when I have a pile of cash, I buy Tesla stock. I'm expecting a pile of cash in January. Gary, I hope you keep the stock price down into January because I'm selling this house. When this house is sold, I get a pile of cash. I'm going to put a chunk of cash into Tesla stock. I'm probably going to buy about $100,000 in Tesla stock when this deal closes. So if you can keep it under $200 a share, I'd really appreciate it because I'd love to get more Tesla stock for my money. Just, this self-fulfilling prophecy, if enough people believe that the Twitter deal is pushing down the stock, then they sell the stock. Then they won't buy the stock because they figure the stock's affected by the overhang. And he not alone, Dan Ives was in on it. A whole bunch of other people are talking about it. Gary's a persuasive guy. Look, and I want to be clear. I give Gary credit. I think Gary offers some meaningful and valuable analysis from time to time. But I mean, just look at this. Look at right here. Look at his long list of factors. When your story is, I've got a whole bunch of factors. He's got like 8 factors or something like that. And then anything goes the way whatever happens, you can say, well, see, I called it with factor number three. You got the other seven factors wrong, but I called it with factor number three. There's somewhere in here that Gary said that a big catalyst for Tesla stock is going to be when they do 450,000 deliveries in Q4, which anybody who's paying attention knows now that 450,000 deliveries in Q4 is unlikely. We're not expecting 450,000 deliveries in Q4. Troy Teslak is predicting like 425, Wall Street maybe 430. Because of the way Tesla has changed their deliveries schedule, that pushes down deliveries and other factors. And basically production outpaces delivery, so you don't get as much as you expect. The real question is, can they reach a 40,000 a week run rate by the end of the year? That would be a really positive sign. Or they get close to a 40,000 a week run rate. But 40,000 a week is over 2 million a year, right? And that's, if they get to 2 million a year this year and they grow 50%, that means they're 3 million a year next year, and they produce, not deliver, 2.3, 2.4 million cars in 2023. That would be great. Maybe it's 2.2 million, but clearly more than 2 million. If you're at a run rate of 2 million at the end of the year and you're at a run rate of 3 million at the end of next year, then you should be somewhere in the middle for the whole year. So that would, that's what Elon has projected as 40,000 a week run rate, or that's what they're targeting for the end of the year. I'm hearing good news out of Berlin, so they may be getting close to that. Whether Texas needs to ramp to get there, Fremont probably needs to grow a little bit, but I think they may achieve that 40,000 a week by the end of the year, and that's a really good sign for the future. But dropping the 450,000 deliveries, now if they hit 440,000 deliveries for Q4, Gary can say that's why the stock's going to tank. You just give yourself enough ammo that you can always point to something and say, see, I was right because I talked about this. That's what happens when you have 8 things going. Tesla catalysts, he's talking about mid fiscal year 23, mid fiscal year 24, he just throws a whole bunch of catalysts in there. And look, I appreciate the price target. Like, Gary is positive about the price in the long run, but if you think Tesla stock is going to hit $550 a share in a year, then you're buying at 200, you're buying at 250, you're buying at like, it doesn't matter what the share price is. You're buying, because the thing you don't want to do is play timing games where you're thinking the stock might drop to 140, as I think pack chicken, whatever, Chicken Genius has said. If you're holding out for 140 and it drops to 170, and you didn't buy at 170 because you thought it was going to drop to 140, and then the stock goes to 550, like Gary says, you feel like an idiot because you missed out on all those gains from when you could have bought at 170. My approach is, look, I think the stock's going up. I'm not worried about next year. I'm thinking down the road. And I don't play timing games at all. I buy a stock when I think it's undervalued, and I think Tesla is badly undervalued, grossly undervalued compared to what its long-term value is going to be. So when I have free cash, I buy the stock because I can't predict these short-term stock price movements. No one can. Gary can't predict them either. Gary can throw a whole bunch of stuff out there. If you make 20 predictions, some of them are going to be right. Right? And then you can say, see, I was right about something. But the reality is nobody can predict short-term stock price movements. We don't know what's going to happen. And if you try to play the short-term game, you might miss the long-term game. Because if you're waiting for the stock to drop to a certain price, let's say you're waiting for 180 and it drops to 182, and you didn't buy, and you could have bought at 200, you noticed it at 200, you could have bought at 200, and you waited for 180, and the stock goes to 1,000. You missed out on a 5x because you were waiting for another 20 bucks. That's why you don't play timing games. That's why I don't play. This is not financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I do. And I'm telling you, this Twitter overhang story doesn't make any sense. And Gary's twisting of the story and other people's twisting of the story. First, the overhang is because the deal's out there. Then the overhang will be resolved if Elon walks away. Then Elon tries to walk away and the overhang's still there. And then it's in court and the overhang. And when it's finally lifted, all of a sudden it's not lifted anymore. That's the sign that it's a bogus story. He said it was lifted, and then he kept going with it because the stock price didn't go back up. So it had to be the overhang. The overhang is baloney. The Twitter deal has nothing to do with Tesla. And the idea that Elon's distracted from Tesla. Like, Elon spends more than half his time at SpaceX. Elon has been that kind of mind, and that Elon says crazy things and Elon's reckless. Elon has always been reckless. The guy made $180 million in PayPal, and he threw it all into a rocket company, an electric car company, which everybody thought was the dumbest thing he could have done with his money. It was the most reckless thing he could have done with his money, is he started up 2 companies. Yes, he started up Tesla. Tesla was nothing before he got there. He started up Tesla. He started up SpaceX. He put all his money into these 2 companies, and he kept them both alive, and he got them both going. right? That was reckless. And he said all kinds of crazy stuff over the years. And those of us who followed Elon for years, and I've been an investor in Tesla since 2016, following, SpaceX and Tesla for years before that. We know he's mercurial, he's reckless, he says crazy stuff, he posts shit memes, whatever it is. Elon does all of that. It's not a big deal. And if you're in for the ride, you're in for the ride, and it's going to have ups and downs, and you can't predict when the ups and downs are going to be. You can say you can predict them, right? But sometimes you're wrong. And if you rely on those short-term predictions, you miss out on potentially massive gains. So I'm looking at this saying $550 price target, that's nonsense. The long-term value of Tesla stock, you go out 8 years to 2030, when you're looking at 3 terawatt hours, you're looking at $500 a kilowatt hour, you're looking at 1.5 trillion in revenue, and you're looking at like a $3,000 share price. And that's conservative. That leaves out like robotaxi never happens. That leaves out bot never happens. That leaves out AI training, supercomputers, dojo. With all of that, you still get to easily $3,000 a share. So who cares whether you buy it at 200 or 180 or 220? If it's going to 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, who cares about these short-term stock price movements? I don't obsess about short-term stock price movements. I am very, very heavily invested in Tesla. It's like a large share of my net worth, and I don't care. I'm just not worried about it. The bumps go. I don't like the negativity, and I don't like people who are making money. I mean, I'm making a little bit of money on my YouTube channel, right? By making videos about this. I don't like people who are making money manufacturing stories about it. I try to tell you my perspective. This is what's going on. I make a little bit of YouTube ad revenue. I make a little bit of money from Patreon and the Locals platform and YouTube channel memberships. And please support me on those platforms if you like what I would describe as rational, calm, long-term thinking and my perspective. If you appreciate all that, please support me on those platforms, especially the Locals platform where I can talk about more things and it's a free speech platform. I don't like seeing people manufacture stories and make up stuff that doesn't really make sense. Gary is caught out by, he said the overhang was lifted and then it wasn't. And all these other people jumping on the overhang, like, well, when's the overhang lift now? The overhang's never going to go away. If Elon stays as CEO of Twitter and he puts in 40 hours a week at Twitter and they deliver in Q4 and they deliver in Q1 and they deliver in Q2 and the company's growing and FSD goes live and all these good things happen, and you're still going to insist on a Twitter overhang holding the stock down? When does the story die? I mean, here's a question for you. Suppose Elon stays at Twitter and he never leaves as CEO of Twitter and he makes some changes and gets things going. What happens if Gary's wrong and Elon actually turns the company around and a year from now Twitter is banging and they're making money? When does the overhang lift? What if Elon talks more shit to Joe Biden? What if Elon does more, memes that are offensive to people? Does the overhang last forever? At some point Tesla delivers FSD, bot starts becoming a reality a few years from now, who knows? The robo-taxi network goes live. You see a large expansion in battery production. Tesla Energy grows 200% a year. At some point, there's no clear end to the overhang if Elon doesn't do what Gary says and he doesn't bring in some other CEO to do ads. Because Gary doesn't get that Elon isn't running Twitter to make money on ads. He's building Twitter to create a totally new platform. He doesn't get it, just like he doesn't really understand Tesla's business model either. So those are my thoughts on the Twitter overhang. I wanted to go in depth on it. I wanted to explore it. I've challenged Gary to have a conversation with me, whether it's on my platform or another platform with a neutral moderator, since Gary is afraid of me for some reason. He's afraid to actually have a genuine conversation with me. He somehow thinks I'm going to bash him. I just had a conversation with Ross Gerber. I don't agree with Ross on stuff. I didn't shoot at him. We had a great conversation. What is Gary afraid of? What he's afraid of is that I'm going to pick apart his analysis. And most people don't ask him the hard questions that I'm going to ask him. So he's afraid of actually having a conversation with somebody he knows is going to ask hard questions. He gets a lot of softball questions from a lot of people. I grill him with hard questions and he can't handle it on Twitter. So he's no way is he going to come on and deal with me online, even if he's got a neutral moderator. You can have Alexander, you can have Farzad, you can have Herbert, whoever you want. He's afraid of it. And I just debunked it here. Like, what happened? Really simple question for Gary. What happens to the Twitter overhang if Elon doesn't do what you say? Does the Twitter overhang last for 10 years? It's a made up concept. He's just selling t-shirts. He's just telling a story. It doesn't work.
Now, just to be clear, Gary insists he didn't say he was the one who popularized Twitter overhang. He said that's a lie. And he says, no, I don't fear you, despite telling this other person that it made him fear for his safety. Here's Gary's message after I sent him your video. I worry for my safety. Did you lie to her or are you lying to me? And he says he didn't popularize Twitter overhang, even though he has official Twitter overhang merchandise in his tweets. I come over as a nasty, angry man. This video makes me look like a nasty, angry man. Took your side with that stupid, unnecessary Earl story. Apparently, the Earl overhang is still existing. I would not publish this video. You got much more to gain by sitting down with him. Gary Black would never do a video with me. I've tried before. He's afraid of me, not physically afraid for his safety. He's afraid I will do things like I do in this video that expose him for the liar that he is. Watch the video for yourself, and you got it right here. You got it right here. Gary tells somebody he worries for his safety, and then he tells me, and I don't fear you. Gary, were you lying to her or are you lying to me? And does anybody believe you didn't popularize Twitter overhang when you're literally selling official Twitter overhang merchandise through your Twitter account with 250,000 followers, Gary? Gary is a liar. Gary is toxic to the Tesla community. They're going to say that I'm toxic. They say that people who criticize Gary and people who criticize Earl are toxic. Gary and Earl bash Elon every day, all day long. And they're not nasty or angry. They're nice. They're sweet. And anybody who criticizes them, they can criticize Elon and that's okay, but we can't criticize them because Gary plays freaking victim.
Please let me know what you think of the overhang in the comments below. Please support me on the Locals platform, on Patreon, or as a YouTube channel member. Check out my t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please like this video, share it, and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.